No, it's one of the more unusual ways to keep George Best's memory alive. Today, his sister Barbara brought 60 talented Belfast youngsters to Manchester. Fancy footwork was on display, but it was dance rather than football. Her visit coincides with her new book about her memories of George. And I'm delighted to say that Barbara joins me now. You've come hot foot from the Trafford Centre. You've dashed across here to be with us. 60 high school students all dancing. Just tell us what that was about.
Well, basically, they are 60 students from cross community schools in Northern Ireland who are very talented, and they were brought together. They come from all backgrounds, and it's basically to give them something to focus on. And they got through very strict and very rigid auditions from 350 and whittled it down to 60 students. They were asked to pick a subject, and they picked George, as simple as that.
That's a great memory of him. Now, you have written this book, Our George. A lot has been written about George before and after his death. Why did you want to write this one?
It's not something that I set out. It was an idea which was actually put to me, and I poo-pooed the idea. It was just a few months after George had died. Our lives were totally all over the place. Obviously, after George's illness, the funeral, we had a beautiful house in France which had been deliberately destroyed in an arson attack. The contents of George's estate, I learned that I was the beneficiary. Just so many things were happening, and someone said to me, "Oh, I think there's a book in there somewhere." But I didn't really, it wasn't something that I had set out to do, but it all fell into place, and I thought, well, why not?
It's very much the family's view of George and the life you had and so on. I mean, I was reading at the weekend, and it brought back great memories for me from my Belfast days. And there's lovely sort of shots from George as a kid, and also the letters he wrote home when he first went to United, because you didn't have a telephone, did you? So this was the only way you could communicate.
Exactly. I mean, we didn't even have a telephone at home whenever George first went to Manchester. We had to go around the phone to the Craiger Road and ring from a call box. Yeah. So certainly the letters are a very, very special part of the book.
Yes. There was a lovely one where he wrote, he just scored in a game and played very well, and he signed himself Garrincha Best after the great Brazilian player.
Exactly, and it's incredible. I obviously had heard of Garrincha but didn't really know much about him until I did a little bit of research, and the comparisons are incredible. For George to have compared himself to apparently someone who was second to Pele. He also had a drink problem. He loved women. He died of liver disease as well. So for me, it was quite poignant.
Right.
And quite
it must have been very emotional for you writing this book, because you deal with your mum's death. I knew your mum and your dad well in earlier days, and she died quite early. And then George's death. I mean, and you had to relive it.
It was extremely difficult. Once I had signed a contract for the book, I literally panicked. I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. But I went back a few times and spoke to Dad, and as you know, my dad's a wonderful man, and without his approval, I would never have done it. Right. And he reassured me that it was fine to go ahead, but it took me many, many months before I could actually put pen to paper. It was very difficult to open your heart in such a way, and from reading I'm sure you read bits and pieces of the book.
It is a really
very
good,
emotional.
An emotional read, and I know your dad's in his late 80s, and he's a lovely, decent, down-to-earth man, and send my regards to him, and thank you very much indeed for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And now, with two teams aiming for a big knockout, one on the pitch and one in the ring, here's Tony with the sport.